Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about a publication that we just released on the impact of Megaships. What I'll do basically is this. Ask a few questions, try to answer these. Where are we? How did we get there? What is the issue? Where will we be heading, or might be heading? And how to make this whole business of Megaships work. Where are we? First the question, how big are Megaships? Well, big. Mega big. So these are real giants. They are bigger, of course, than a whole lot of houses and apartment buildings and skyscrapers and even urban neighborhoods. So then the question, of course, is, are these giants, are these kind and gentle giants, such as in some children's books, or are these mean giants that do inflict pain? That is the question. So here we are. We have big ships. How do we get there? Well, by a development that is going more and more rapidly. It was indicated before, it took us 2 decades to double in size between 1975 and 1995. It took 1 decade to go from 5,000 TU to 9,000 TUs. And now it took 1 decade to go from 9 to 19,000 TUs. And this ain't over yet. So what is the issue? Well, the issue is, does this all still make sense? And this is a picture that resembles a bit the picture that we've seen before. We see the seaside, we see the costs going down if vessel size go up. Then we have the land side, where the costs go up if the vessel size go up. And then we have, let's say, the curve above that, which is, let's say, the total cost for the transport chain. And the question is, where exactly are we on these curves? To start with vessel costs. The vessel cost savings are decreasing. And of course, this whole process of bigger ships is driven by economies of scale that shipping lines want to realize. And this has happened. Doubling the ship size has reduced their cost with around 1/3. So that's substantial. But the savings are decreasing. Now, if you look at the different, let's say, generations of container ships, this round of upsizing of container ships has brought cost savings that are 4 to 6 times smaller than what was the previous round of upsavings. So the cost savings are becoming smaller and smaller. And that is somehow illustrated in this figure, depending on your assumptions on the age of the vessel and the speed. So then the question is, you have these ever bigger ships. Can these ships be filled? Short answer is no. Not for the moment, at least. Maybe some carriers can fill these ships efficiently, but certainly not all of them. So there is a certain disconnect between what is happening in the boardrooms of shipping lines and what's happening in the real economy. Moreover, there are alliances, partly also fueled by these bigger and bigger ships. And these alliances give the opportunity also to the little boys, the little guys, to actually get the big toys. So that makes matters worse, in a way. This leads to a lot of overcapacity. So you could say, well, fair enough. This is pain for shipping lines. This pain is self-inflicted. Let them deal with it. But there's also pain to others. There's pain to the whole supply chain. There's supply chain costs. What kind of costs? Well, first of all, of course, the adaptations. Adaptations to infrastructure. The ships are bigger, wider, deeper, so you need to have longer quays, stronger quays, more outreach in your cranes, deeper fairways, etc. Then the ships stay longer in the port. We did an analysis on it for 2014. We saw that Megaships, they stay 20% on average longer in ships. which is in itself, I have to say, an accomplishment of a lot of ports and terminals. So they managed to somehow get the time that these ships stay in ports almost as shortly as possible. So a lot of effort is required for that, to actually achieve that. And that, of course, causes a lot of stress, I suppose, to you that handle these ships or deal with these. And then there are additional risks to the supply chain. Bigger and bigger ships are becoming more difficult to insure, more difficult to salvage, and they also, in a way, increase the risks for the supply chain. The supply chain, in a way, becomes less resilient if you put more and more cargo on less and less ships that call less and less frequently in ports. And then there are the peaks. Megaships have redefined the meaning of the word peak, you could say. Truck movements, train movements, yard occupancy, they're all related to the arrival of a megaship, as we try to illustrate with this figure. If a megaship arrives, you see suddenly a lot of trucks, a lot of trains, the yard filling up. What does that mean? Well, that means something for the utilization of the equipment. Suddenly you need to have 8 cranes to handle this big ship, which then for most of the time are actually not utilized. It needs flexibility of labor. So suddenly a lot of people need to be active to as quickly as possible handle this ship. It needs something about, means something about yard space. And it also could possibly cause congestion in a port. Then, back to the issue. Where are we on the curve? Well, we try to somehow estimate this. We did a kind of a thought experiment where we said, well, imagine that instead of all these 18, 19, 20,000 TEU ships that are ordered or are in the order books, suppose that instead of these ships, you would have ordered 14,000 TEU ships, modern 13,000 TEU ships. What would have been, let's say, your advantages in terms of handling costs? And our calculation somehow shows that, let's say, going from 14 to 19 in this way increases the land transportation cost, so the port, the terminal, the interland cost, with around $50 US per transported TEU, which I think is substantial. If you look at the freight rates for example, for Asia-Europe trade, last month it was around $400 US. Well, if you put this $400 and then say, well, that is fine, but at the same time you also have $50 US extra cost, I think that is a substantial amount. Question, who pays for that? Well, that is of course in a way the elephant, the monster in the room. Of course, these giant monsters need king-size beds, you could say. But in a way, these mega ships are like the giants going to a hotel, requiring the king-size bed, but only paying for a single bed. And worse, in some cases, also actually expecting that the hotel gives a rebate, because he's such a giant. So, where we're heading then? We looked at 3 different scenarios. A scenario where there is, let's say, a growth related to, let's say, the market demand growth in line with this. A scenario in which there's 24,000 TEU ships, and the one in which there's 100 of these 24,000 TEU ships. And the results are pretty scary. Let's say in the maximum scenario, you'll see 24,000 TEU ships not only in the Far East, in North Europe, but also in the Mediterranean. You'll see 19,000 TEU ships in North America. And you see 14,000 TEU ships in South America and Africa. That could happen in 5 years. But even if you take the less extreme examples, you see pretty scary figures. You only have to look at the averages to realize that something is coming up that might cause problems in ports. The average in North European ports could in 5 years be 17,000 TEUs, which means the triple E will, in a way, become the new normal in most of these ports. Every day you will see one in the main ports in North Europe. So, where we're heading? Maybe a decade of port gridlock, who knows? Then, all depends, of course, on how to make this work. Are there any solutions? Yes, well, maybe there are. First of all, of course, a more balanced decision-making. Ports should certainly take into account all the public interest and see if it actually makes sense to continue accommodating these megaships, also in the long term. Align incentives and costs to the public interest. In many cases, we've seen that ports or countries are actually subsidizing megaships. But it's the megaships that cause a lot of these costs as well. Then, of course, policy support for supply chain productivity. Make sure that there will be reforms that also make it possible to actually optimize the use of these ships. Collaboration at the regional level, at the port level, to also somehow be a more powerful partner vis-à-vis the shipping lines and also the terminal operators. And finally, and I think this could be a first step to actually come to, let's say, a more reasonable approach to megaships, is a forum where liners, container shipping lines, terminals, ports, other transport actors actually come together and discuss about how to optimize these ships, how to optimize the supply chain. And I hope that our report will be a first step into that global discussion, and also maybe this discussion that will take in a few minutes. Thank you very much.